Hello, and welcome to the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast, sponsored by MaxFab Consulting, the podcast that embodies the spirit of progress and resilience by showcasing inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs who exemplify the remarkable traits of kangaroos. Those traits of adaptability, agility, courage, resilience, empathy, vision, authenticity, and continuous learning are what we want to find in our leaders and what we're going to bring to you today. So sit back, get ready to enjoy another episode of the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast. Carolyn comes to us with a heck of a story, and I'm going to let her tell you, and then we're going to do what we normally do and kind of already started to chat. So we'll probably run down some rabbit holes, and this should all be awful. So without further ado, Carolyn, tell us about, you. We know you're from Pittsburgh, but tell us about you, where you grew up, a little bit about your family, and then just kind of walk us through your challenges and take us all the way up into your Sentinel event, and we'll share some stories. So I'm glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, to start at childhood, really, I have the most incredible family. My mom is the most selfless woman in the world. My dad has worked so hard in his life for his family. He lost his dad when he was 5, and he always said he would provide the life that he never had. He's just the most selfless and gracious person. People even say he's the best boss they've ever had. And my sister, she is a firecracker. I love her so much. She's always been there for me, even when I couldn't even be there for myself. And she just is very special, and we're now best friends. When we were growing up, we were definitely not as close, but we're adults now. And my life kind of was amazing at home, but then I went to school and it was like, bam, I'm placed in a pack of wolves. I didn't fit in. I didn't have friends. I got a death threat in 3rd grade. So I think that kind of was like the start of my kind of rabbit hole whenever I got older, because as I continued to get older, I got bullied more and more, and I just felt so small and horrible about myself. Like I even still sometimes have them in my head, like when they used to call me Marvin the Martian, because apparently I had frizzy hair, yellow teeth, and a giant nose, none of which is true. But they made me hate my nose. And you have to be so careful with the words you say to people, because as a kid, that affects you so much growing up. And as an adult, it transpires more. But because I was going through a lot of that, I really just didn't really know who I was. I just always felt just like an outsider. And then I found out I had a learning disability when I was a sophomore in high school. And I found out that I have nonverbal learning disability, which is basically you're highly verbal, but sometimes you struggle to make out like social cues, or sometimes you'll misread something. It also affects you with spatial awareness, which a lot of my friends say explains my parallel parking, and they're not wrong. But I really had to fight through that and, really just keep working through that. And I, then went to boarding school for kids with learning disabilities after being at public school. And it just kind of was almost like a here we go again thing. And when I got to college, I thought it was going to be the best 4 years of my life, but it was not. And I really, really struggled. And that was when my almost, attempt happened. And thank God for my best friend in the entire world, because my saving grace, my angel, she literally called me at the right moment. And that was just incredible. I can't even believe that. Looking back, I'm just like, wow. And after that, I kind of started to realize that I needed to get help, and I needed to admit to myself that I was not okay. And I think that was the big step, was I'm not okay, and I need to not pretend that I'm okay, because you're just making yourself worse, Carolyn. You're just going to make yourself like so much worse. I would always tell myself that. And, then I started doing better. I was going to college, and I was making it through. I was still struggling, and I was still like seeing a therapist and everything. But it wasn't until my life-threatening car accident, March 15th, 2020, when my life changed forever. I was in this car accident, went so bad to the point where I grabbed my seatbelt seconds before the crash. Had I not had grabbed the seatbelt, I would have gone flying through the windshield and died. I always think about how lucky I am to be alive. And I knew that was my second chance at life, because honestly, being alive was just a blessing. And after that, I just realized it's time to use your voice. It's time to make this like your passions and everything. And then it kind of just shifted something in me where I really, really want to help people who are struggling with what was going through. Because at that point, it was like a light switch after the car accident. I just want to be with my best friends, my family. You know, it was just like a feeling I never had before. And that's when I really realized, you know, my voice was important. And that's when I realized and kind of came up with the idea to write Unbreakable.
So, so let's go back to it's amazing, you know. I'll be 60 next year, and the older you get,
You don't
uh,
look 60, by the way.
thanks. I try. So, but the older you get, it's you can put the pieces of the puzzle better together, or you have more pieces to make the puzzle, whatever it is, however you want to put that. And so when I have these conversations, because I've had my brush with suicide, and that comes from PTSD and moral injury. And in some ways, you were morally injured young, right? Uh, Big nose, yellow teeth, Marvin the Martian, whatever that is, right? Whatever, kids are just brutal to other children.
It's
It's just a crazy
horrible.
thing. But when you put all those pieces together, you say, what could have been different? And so before we talk about the ditch you got into, this sentinel moment that rips you out of the ditch, right? And starts to steer you. And we're going to talk about ownership and victimhood and all those things. Before you get to that, if you go back and think about it, what could have or should have been different in your life to protect you from that being so significant that it drove you to this self-doubt, this lack of of feeling good about yourself, your worth, and those type of things that drives the depression, right? Because really what we tell ourselves we believe, and
Yeah.
you get into this cycle, and then pretty soon you're just depressed all the time because you don't have anything good to say about yourself, and neither does anybody else, and it just gets terrible. So what could have been different?
I think really looking back now, I see it as everything happened the way it was supposed to. I went through all that trial and error to better myself at the end of the day, to be a better adult than I was kid. But really, the biggest thing that I would say to myself is not have self doubt as much as I did. And I truly, truly hated myself. I thought that I deserved pain. And I just can't even imagine, I just can't believe that I was so mean to myself. I think the one thing we all forget is to give ourselves grace. I never gave myself grace. I always beat myself up. Oh, that guy didn't like you because you're ugly. That guy didn't, whatever. Or that friend dropped you. Oh, because they think you're annoying. And I would just go down with this rabbit hole. But I think if I would have had more grace and more vulnerability, especially with my like family, because I didn't really open up to them until my 20s, honestly. And our, family relationship has never been better. And that's a lot partly because of our communication vulnerability. And I just really hope that other people can have that too and find that within themselves and know that they're not alone.
So you think things would have been better had you been able to go to your family with your situation sooner?
I think things could have been, that's the thing. Everything, it could have happened. I could have not answered that phone call. I could have not done, but everything that's happened has led to that pivot moment where I realized this is my purpose to help people. I tell myself I've suffered all this pain. I've suffered all this just horrible things because it's meant to be a testimony to help other people. And I always
So
wanted to help people.
what do you tell the 16-year-old high school girl or the 22-year-old college girl right now that's listening to this that
Yeah.
goes, man, I'm in the same place, and this is very similar story, and I'm depressed, and I don't like myself, and I don't like my body image. This is what leads to bulimia and all these other things, right? And I like, what do you tell them right now? If they come into your life and say this is all going on, what do you tell them?
So I think I would say a little different advice for the 16 and 22-year-old. First, for 16,
Sure.
and if I was talking to my 16-year-old self, I would literally be like, stop trying so hard to fit in and start trying to be who you are. Don't wait until after college to find yourself. Understand the fact that it's a really hard time, and I get it. People are always cliquey and there's the populars and whatever, but I was never popular and I think I turned out okay. I think it's really just about understanding that this is time that you're discovering who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And the way that you can build the most genuine friendships, and the friendships that I do have from high school, are because of the fact that it was a very, very deep relationship. I didn't have I have no surface level relationships now. And I think that that can be what happens a lot in high school is, you all live around the same like area. And so you guys are, but it's convenient, but it's like truly understanding like who are those people there who are like on your same page. And even if they're not in the popular group, or even if you're not, whatever, it doesn't mean that you're worse than someone else. It doesn't mean that they're better than you. It doesn't mean anything. It just means they're different. And I think it's really about embracing how you are different. I think for so long, we've all been told to be put in a box and say exactly this and do exactly this and wear exactly this and act exactly this. But when you think about it, at the end of the day, if you act like anyone who is not you, you're only hurting yourself. And that is the biggest lesson I had to learn. And that is something I would tell the 16-year-old to keep going, keep fighting, find friends that are going to align with your interests. And don't be afraid to be yourself, because no one should get ridiculed or bullied ever for being who they are. Everyone should be allowed to be who they are and understand it's okay to be who you are.
I love it. What would you tell the 22-year-old?
The 22-year-old, I would tell, and this was about me whenever I started writing the book, I was turning 23. Sure. I would say that it's okay to not have it figured out. I remember going through college and being like, what am I going to do after this? I don't know. I went to school for marketing and I figured something in that. But I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. And don't stress yourself out so much to the point where it's going to affect your mental health, because your 20s are really just time to really figure out who you are based on high school. Okay, hopefully in high school you've gotten a little idea of who you are. But when you're older, it's really about embracing it and living it out that way, living your life authentically, finding authentic friendships and people who want to be around you because of who you are and not who you try to be, not who you portray or whatever, because that's never going to work out. And it took me after college to realize that.
So I'm a big fan of running your life like a CEO runs a company. And one of the things a CEO has to do is hire and fire, right? It's got to hire staff. Well, we're going through it right now, right? We're going to have a new president. They're picking their cabinet, right? They do that, right? They go through, they pick the people that they want around them. And so in life, I think we do that, right? We let certain people in at whatever level. Sometimes it's good acquaintances, people that you might trust to ask advice. You might have a friend that's a nurse who would ask advice about medical stuff or those type of things. And then you have the more inner circle friends where you would talk about maybe more intimate generalities. And then you have that really tight inner circle where, there's not a lot of secrets and, you kind of know everything about everything. That team of people when you're 16 doesn't look like it does when you're 22, and it doesn't look like it does when it's 30. So talk about that phenomenon, because you've mentioned this now 3 times, and I'm a big proponent of your life team, but I'm also a big proponent of you have to know who needs to be fired from your life team. Sometimes people get on your life team and you drag them around with you and they just become soul suckers.
Yes.
And they're not telling you the right things. So talk to me about your journey with that. So
actually, that's a good point. I should have kind of clarified that with being 22 is, your friends are going to change throughout and you're going to find some really good people. But also, unfortunately, not everyone's a good person. And there are, friendship breakups happen and they hurt. They really, really hurt. It could be someone you really thought was going to be in your life forever. But at the same time, with that breakup, all you do is you have to say, I wish them well. I hope that they do great on their own, but they're not going to be in my life anymore. And that's also how I look at it too, is, wish them the best and move on. Because when you have negative people, which I really did at one point in my life, that are just telling you that you can't do things, or like you're not going to make it, or you're just not going to whatever, it sucks your soul out of you. And it really, like you kind of said, it really kind of, it just changes, and it makes you depressed and negative. And I personally don't want to live like that. And sometimes you do have to find friends and let go of friends and understand that not everyone's meant to be in your life forever. Now, I'm so grateful that I have my group of girls, my best friends. They're the best people ever. And actually, it's funny, two of them went to my high school, and I knew of them, but we weren't best friends. And so I always think about it. We talk about, what if we were friends in high school? How different would it have been? But I'm just so thankful for them, and a really small group of people who have stuck with me. And it's about finding those people who are going to go through the trenches with you. People are going to say, okay, you're going through a hard time. I get it. I'm here for you. But you also need to understand, and you need to find those friends where you're blunt. If someone is doing something and they're going down the wrong path, you got to say it. You have to. Because even if they hate you in that moment, they will thank you later.
I had a boss one time that he had a list of expectations that he handed when you're doing your first, you work for me, here's my expectation. Military, it's a military interactions what it was, a list of expectations. This guy was a little anal, so this thing was pretty detailed. On page 3 of this thing, right in the middle of it, it said, if you ever have a 10-minute conversation with me and 5 minutes after the conversation ends, somebody tells me I have a booger in my nose, he said, I'm going to come back and kick your butt. And
wow, that's a real one. You got to be a real one for that one.
Well, I mean, for somebody to stop you, just to stop you and say, "Hey, Carolyn, come here for a minute. You got a big old goob coming out of your right nostril, right?"
Yeah.
There's a level of loyalty, love, concern, all those kind of things, and so you have to take that, right? You have to take it. You can't say, leave me alone, or you're picking on me or whatever. You got to take that, and you got to look at that for what it is, which is grace. And I will tell the 22-year-old Carolyn that these friends that you cherish from the time you're 22 to 30 may not be there when you're 35. Kids change, marriage changes. Well, I hope so, but sometimes, and it's not that they go away completely or they betray you, but sometimes they need their space. So you have your list of girlfriends, and then one gets married, and because they get married, they move, and those kind of things. So that stuff changes. So it still is shifting sands, and and you have to maintain those relationships. So talk to me about so here you are, you're struggling. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know what you want to do. You're probably not running with the best pack of people. You got self-confidence issues, and you're driving down the road, and for some reason you reach over and click your seatbelt like minutes before you get whacked, and everything changes. But I want you to take me through the accident. Tell me about what you were doing in life, what you were doing that day, the accident, and where you ended up. And then I want you to talk about what you were doing, because I can tell you, right, I know the bed that I was laying in the hospital when I had my blood clot that turned around that said, number one, stop trying to do this by yourself. You're going to need help to get better. That's huge. I'll leave that part there. I'll give you that one, but the rest I want you to take everybody through, because this is really important. Because sometimes people have sentinel moments that aren't as critical as a car accident or a blood clot, and they miss them. They miss them, and they miss an opportunity. So.
Yeah, I think it starts with the fact of, like you said, it doesn't need to be a life-threatening car accident or a blood clot to realize, okay, wait a minute, I need to look at my life differently. That should be something that you choose. You say, okay, where am I in my life and where do I want to go? Looking at just kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, this is who's in my life. Who is going to be there for me and who isn't? My friends there for me after the car accident even. that day specifically, actually, if you really want to go back to it, I was with one of my best friends and she came with me to this party that I went. Of course, the guy liked, whatever. He invited me to the party. I was like, come with me. And she's like, okay, fine. Then she is like, you know what? No, I'm leaving. So she leaves. And then after that, I'm there and I'm like, kind of like looking, I kind of want to go. And at the end of the night, he was like, do you want to come back with me and my friends? And I was like, to like our apartment, we're going to like drink or whatever. But wait, we were 21, don't worry. And I was like, sure, fine. What's one small car ride? Little did I know that by turning onto that one road and going straight ahead, I would be in a near-death experience and I would be not having my seatbelt on for a second. And then right before, like seconds before, that was when I grabbed the seatbelt. And I still see it, but I've also become at peace with it. I think that's something else too. Trauma experiences and things that you go through in life, I think, because also, let me just say, it was a hit and run. They never actually found who did it. They hit us, backed up the car, got out of the car and ran, and they never found them. So yes, it's something that I'm angry about because obviously that's not right. But at the same time, if I live my life being like, they're never gonna catch that or how dare them, like all this stuff, I'm just not gonna be living my life because I'm gonna be holding on to something that isn't worth holding on to.
No, I love all of that. I mean, you have to, there's something divine in there, right? You needed your seatbelt on so that you could carry on your mission. So something put your seatbelt on for you. That's
Yeah.
number one, right? And so you kind of come to that realization. The second thing you talked about in there was your shift to ownership, right? From being a victim, right? Woe is me, world's against me, nobody likes me, like, call me Marvin the Martian, whatever the hell it is, right? You can blame it on 1,000 things, right? You can stand in front of the mirror all day long going sideways forward, sideways forward. Is my nose really big? Who cares? All right, you gotta get on with that. So then you own it, right? I think self-deprecating humor I think it's magical. I try to use it quite often. I always tell young people, if somebody's picking on you, just agree with them, because then it's boring. They leave, they go someplace else, right? So you're shaken up, and there you are, and you go, I need help. So what did help look like?
Help looked like ambulance, and it looked like also the hospital and the nurses and doctors who were there having to do all these tests and stuff, understanding that I was injured and I couldn't help myself at that point. Like I needed to, obviously my mom was down there the second it happened, and I was very grateful for that too, because it was really terrifying to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. They come in and say that you might have a brain bleed. They know you smashed your head. And it's terrifying because it's like, is this really the end of my life? Am I dying? What is happening? What is happening to me right now? It's the weirdest thing. But you're like, I just want to live. That's
Right.
all. And I need to live. And life is so precious, because that's the truth. Is the greatest gift ever is life. And the second greatest gift is happiness. And I'm not talking about happiness where it's, oh, material things, all this stuff. I'm talking about genuine happiness, taking care of your mental health, taking care of you. Everyone deserves to get there one day. I never thought I would make it there, and I'm happy now.
So you didn't get there on your own. So you had to have some level of help, professional help, those type of things. What did that look like when you decided to say, I'm not gonna walk by myself. I'm gonna get some help. I'm gonna get it right. What did that look like?
Well, of course, I had my therapist, and that was definitely helpful to just like emotionally and mentally have that help. But I'm not gonna lie, I was told I had to do a couple years of physical therapy, and I was very upset. And there were some days I'd go and be like, I don't want to be here. I can just do this. Like, I don't have to go here. Like, whatever. They don't have to tape my knee. Fine, whatever. But I had to accept the fact that I was healing, and I did need to be going to where I was doing the best thing for myself at the time. And even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, it was still something that was what I needed. And I also really tried to be practicing gratitude and positivity and mindset. And so I also tried to be like, well, you can walk. You still can walk. You're walking to the car angry right now, but you can walk. And I remember that one day, and I was so frustrated. And I called my family, and I'm so upset. I just don't know what to do. And of course, my dad always says the right thing and is literally just like, you know what, honey, you're going to get through this. You know, you have great people around you. Just keep going and just move forward. And that's the thing, is you just got to move forward.
Onward. Yeah, that's my word when people are struggling, and that's predicated around the kangaroo, right? Keep moving forward, and
Yeah.
that's what you have to do. So now here you are today. Tell us what we know what inspired the book, but tell us what you want us to what you want us to glean from the book, and then I want to talk about where you're at now and where you think you want to go. You know what? Because this is a journey, right? This is
Yeah.
not there's really it's the endless marathon. Every time you come around a turn, you think you'll see the finish line. It's not there, and that's
Nope.
okay. That's okay because as long as you have the energy to keep running, then it's fun. So
Well, starting with the book, the biggest thing I want people to get out of it is the fact that you are not alone. And I don't think people emphasize how important that saying is, you are not alone, because there are so many times in my life where I felt alone, like no one would understand. But do you know how many other people are out there that are feeling the same way that you are? And that's what I realized through intensive outpatient therapy was, wow, all these kids feel exactly the same way that I do. And, being able to understand that, I'm not alone and I can get help. It's okay to get help. It doesn't matter if I'm a guy. It doesn't matter if I'm a girl. If you need help, you need help, and you have to accept it. Because I'm telling you, getting help is the first step to changing your life and making you unbreakable.
I agree. For men, this is even doubly hard. I won't say it's easy for
Yeah.
women, but
Yeah,
men,
that's a whole other story too with men and mental health. But that is
tough.
something I really do try to emphasize, is it doesn't, just do what you need to do for you and don't be
Right,
ashamed. And the real
right.
people in your life, the people that love you and support you and will be there no matter what, are gonna be there and they're gonna help you through it. And that's honestly the truth.
This is why you have to have the right life team.
The
and
right what?
and the right life team. The
Yeah.
people on your team in life have got to be the right life team because when you come up against this stuff, you need the avenues to do that. I think sometimes the people that complete suicide, I just don't think that they have a big checklist of options.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And so, when you're in a good state, when you're happy, as you put it, happy in its extreme definition, when you're happy, you need to really work on building those buffers. Those things in life that are there when the challenges come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is, even if it's just one or two people, even a psychologist, or maybe you open up to your family or whatever, and even if it's just them, that's okay, because you have to focus on the people you have. I think that was my biggest thing, is when I was younger, I wanted to always have a billion friends, which I do have a lot of friends, but different, like, closeness and stuff. But it's truly just, I had to kind of figure out, okay, these are my people, these are not my people. And I think the best way that you can figure that out too is by starting to open up yourself. And it's being
Right.
vulnerable, but it's a way to not be alone and to feel alone.
So I gather that, especially when you write a book, it's very liberating. I've done that. It's the liberating thing, especially, and it's vulnerable. It's the ultimate vulnerability because then you got to put it out there and people read it, right?
Want to see?
Yeah, well, it's a big deal, and I remember when you get it in your hand the first time, and you're like, wow, look at I did this, and it's a huge credibility. So what would Carolyn today tell Carolyn of 20 years from now?
It's going to be a wild ride. There's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be things that don't always go my way. But for me, I'm a Christian. I believe God has a plan, and I'm just going to stick to that.
I was headed that direction, because when you talk about empty space, meeting somebody,
Mm-hmm.
the Lord Jesus Christ is always there.
Always.
And you have to lean on that. And I don't think you can truly be truly full. I'll give this to you. It came out of a sermon from our pastor. The word sincere, the root of sincere, the Greek root is sine cera, which means without wax. And back in the ancient times, they would the pot builders, the pottery makers, when you make pottery, when you spin the pottery and then you put it in the kiln to heat treat it, it always comes out with cracks, imperfections. And so some of the cracks are significant enough they won't hold fluid, they won't hold liquid. So it's kind of counter to what you're doing. So they'd fill those cracks. Well, back in the day, they would fill the cracks with wax, and then they would put a veneer over the top of it, and people would buy these pots, and they would take them, home, and they would put things in it, and if anything had any temperature to it, the wax would melt, and the pot would leak or crack or fall apart. The practice was that you always bought these pots in the daytime, held them up to the light, and if they were filled with wax, you could see the light shine through the wax, so that you knew that they were filled full of wax. And so when we fill our cracks, because we're all imperfect. When we fill our cracks, we have to fill it with good, solid material. And in Japan, they fill those cracks with gold. So when you buy a vase, the cracks are filled because all the cracks are unique to themselves. It's like a snowflake. When you buy a vase, it'll have the outline, the design on it, because those cracks are filled with gold, filled with substance. And so, yeah. The good Lord Jesus fills our cracks,
Absolutely.
and they're strong and sturdy. They are not wax. So fill your cracks without wax. Sine
Yeah.
cera, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's great advice. That's good.
Yeah.
So where are we going, Carolyn? You got a smile on your face, and I'm telling you, I admire you because I know what you're going through right now, and that's pretty awesome. But you got a smile on your face. You got a book in your hand. What are we doing? Where are we going?
Well, I'm also
Who
a
are you
public
touching? Okay.
So if you need a public speaker for an event, a school, whatever, I would love to come. My website is carolynsophia.com, and I'm sure you'll have the links or something below.
We're going to put all of that on the show. I'm going to have you send me that stuff.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, I would say that if you need a speaker who has a personality and who's been through a lot, I'm your girl. I love doing it. I really, really, really do. I pray that I get booked so much that I get to have a speaking tour. That's where we're hoping to be headed. Also, just, to be able to have, the book help people and, get more people to open up and be vulnerable, and most importantly, be kind to others, because you got to be kind to others. There's no point in being mean to people. Like, I don't get it. It's just exhausting, actually.
Every time I do one of these, usually the episode, this conversation, um, names the podcast, whatever it's going to be. So what I wrote down for yours is that don't be mean to yourself, be who you are, and I think that's huge. And I think for young women in America, even in the world, but I think for young women in America, man, if they can give themselves permission to do that, it's such a shortcut into this emotional development thing, because there's so many things out there, this thing included. There's
Yep.
so many. And I held, for those of you listening, not on video, I held my phone up, but there's so many things that can influence you in the millisecond, and it can drive emotions and dopamine and all those other things, and not all of that's necessarily good. So, yeah. So when you can get right with yourself and get comfortable and be kind to yourself, then you don't need anything else. Then all your cracks are filled with good solid gold, right? And not
Absolutely.
wax. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, and we probably need to have you back. And
Anytime, honestly. That's another thing too. I hope to continue doing podcasts. If you
yeah,
need a podcast guest, I love doing that as well. It's just like healing for me every time I get to tell my story. Because hopefully from each audience, I help at least one person.
I think it's magnificent. People of your age are going to lead people of your age. And when they're struggling, uh, no matter how wonderful I may be, I just don't look right. I'm just not the type of person that you're going to go sit down with because you need some identity, right? One, I'm not a girl. One, I'm not young anymore. And so for a young woman to look at another woman and go, wow, she's had this struggle, and to sit down and to be able to really relate is huge. And I don't think that there's enough of that out there, or there's at least enough access to it. So I think what you're doing is wonderful. I think you're fabulous.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, this is awesome.
yeah. No, it's great. And like I said, we'll probably get another swing at it. So make sure you stick with me when I hang up here, just so we can get the recording finished. But other than that, what do you got left? You get a minute or two just to tell us, give us your world changing thoughts.
Well, I guess my biggest thing, and I really go back to being who you really are because I feel like that's something I didn't do for so long. And I think also once I found out I had my learning disability, it kind of explained, oh, wait, this is why I might be more empathetic than most people because I have gone through it and I understand. And part of kids that have gone through or have nonverbal learning disability, you tend to be the friend that is completely empathetic, the loyal, the one that's really going to be there for people. And I'm thankful that I have that heart. And I think part of it does come from that and really wanting to be there for people. I think that's, finding one or two people in life, whether it is going to church, also that's something else I'd say. I stepped away from church and I went through a whole big thing of not believing. You can see it in Unbreakable, the book, but I realized, I need church and I have like one of my best friends that I go to church with and it's just so fulfilling for me. So maybe you can meet someone at church, maybe you can go by yourself. But honestly, people always ask me how I'm so happy. And I do say faith in God. And I'm not telling people what to believe. I'm just telling you my testimony and my story and how I
Yeah,
found grace and happiness and peace.
yeah.
It wasn't easy.
I love it. There's a lot there, and you're fabulous. I
Anytime.